This is Killer Innovations, a show about ideas, creativity, and how you can innovate. Welcome to the Innovator's Garage, where you learn to create your next game-changing killer innovation.
Welcome to Killer Innovations. I'm your host, Phil McKinney. We are here in the mobile studio, joined by John Osborne. I think, this is the third or fourth time you've now been on the show? Back when you were at Kroger, right? In the early days when we were working together when I was still at HP.
Yep.
And now you're back again here in the seat talking about some of the more recent stuff. A lot of people may not remember from a year ago. You were on the show. We were talking about your work as the chairman for the Zigbee Alliance. And there's been a lot of announcements coming out of Zigbee and the work that you've been doing. But it kind of encompasses the broader big activity just around the whole, device connectivity, IoT devices, that whole menagerie, right? It kind of went through the hype curve and then kind of went into its trough of disillusionment, and now things are starting to scale, those types of things. But give us an update on what's going on with your work on the Zigbee Alliance.
Sure, and I think everyone understands that if they've listened to us in the past, I've always been very open. I want to see interoperability. I want to see consolidation. We at Zigbee have preached that for probably 10 plus years, and we're finally starting to see that all come together. So last year we talked about if all the big players ever got together, what would happen? Well, this year we actually were able to accomplish that. With the recent news, the press release on Apple, Amazon, Google, Zigbee, kind of all coming together saying, let's try to drive the industry into a common direction so that it's good for the consumer, good for the manufacturer, in essence, good for the industry, because it's really that VHS beta type discussion,
right, but
a much larger scale, because there's so many different organizations out there, different technologies. This will really help accelerate that. We've seen a lot of that this year with Zigbee. We've seen growth in our membership. We have we surpassed 3,000 certified products under the Zigbee banner, and we're really starting to see the volumes take off. So the other organization that I work for, LEEDARSON, they're seeing tremendous orders coming in. Volumes are just unbelievably growing. So it's been a good year from the manufacturer's perspective as well. And if we can accomplish what we're trying to do under the new Connected Home over IP program that was announced recently from the Big Four, we think that if we can accomplish our goals within the 12-month period that we've talked about, get product to market, this will really kind of drive the industry even further towards consolidation. And consumers really can just go to the store, buy the product they want, stick it in their house or their commercial building, and it's just going to work. So they don't have to worry about a particular ecosystem or a particular brand or logo that they have to match up. And that's really the goal we're shooting for.
Right. Well, that's really one of the things I think that's held back, right? Because you walk into a Home Depot and you want to buy a digital door lock. I got 10 different manufacturers. How do I know which one is that works with my particular thermostat or my device that I've got in my house? How do I know it's secure, that some bad guy's not going to be able to hack the door lock and be able to get into my house, or my baby camera watching my grandchild in the crib or whatever, right? And so the consumers there's been this wave. Consumers kind of taking half a step back, saying, I'm going to kind of wait until the dust settles here. And what you're saying is the dust is starting to settle here.
It is settling, and we didn't want this to be just another new standard, because everyone just kind of freezes and waits to see what happens. So what we are trying to accomplish is taking existing technologies, take the best of those, put them together so that we can come to market a lot quicker. So we really do have a 12-month goal. These folks we've already started setting up meetings. There's a big member meeting coming up that I'm sure we'll have probably 200 or 300 people showing up to be part of this process. And much like we saw with Amazon when they joined, they pushed the All Hubs project. So you didn't have to have 5 hubs or gateways in your house. You could just have one from anyone, and it supported all the other products. So their name kind of drove that standard forward very quickly. We accomplished that in months. And great credit to our Amazon representatives that were part of that process. So I expect to see the same thing at a much greater speed and scale now that we have all of the other two big players coming in. And the membership growth that we're seeing, I mean, IKEA, Residio, we have another one being announced later today. So we're just seeing this massive desire to get on board and push forward.
So this always gets into the question, right, of innovators thinking, okay, my way to success is I got to come up with a new widget, new idea, and that I got to go win that one widget. But in today's world, everything's an ecosystem play. All right, the one person with the one idea to try to get ultimate traction becomes incredibly hard to get to scale.
It's difficult. It's time consuming. It's expensive.
Right.
And really, what we're going to enable. We're just going to build the infrastructure. We separate the application layer. And if you have a really good idea for a particular device, go build that device. You don't have to worry about building the ecosystem around it, the protocol around it, testing and certification. You can just do that one thing that you know really well and bring it to someone else's ecosystem.
Right.
And these big guys are going to love that because now they don't have to spend as much time creating all of those unique systems as well.
Well, this gets into a point because a lot of people think, well, yeah, but if I vertically integrate the entire stack, then I get lock-in, and that's how I win. When in reality, it's like, no. To win, you want to refocus your innovation dollars into true value add. There's not a lot of value add in protocol stacks, right, in today's world. There's very well-defined security models that are out there that you can adopt and embed. There's wireless protocols, pretty well understood. You can embed those, take advantage of those. Don't waste your dollars in an area that's very well defined. Shift those dollars to the segments where you can actually add value to your innovation. Don't waste your time and money doing the
focus on the human factor side of whatever it is you're trying to develop. You're not going to go out and recreate Wi-Fi. I mean, just use it. It's an infrastructure.
Exactly.
Bluetooth, use it. It's an infrastructure. Zigbee chip will be the same thing.
Right. One of the things we were talking before we started today's show was around, the announcement, particularly the fact that you were successful at bringing Apple, Google, and Amazon together is like, that was a real eye-opener for everybody in the industry because everybody's been, Apple's been involved in, this little thing over here, and Google's been gotten their fingers in a couple of the different other groups that are kind of in the IoT space. Amazon kind of has been doing their own thing and then trying to push it out, strategy. You got them all together under Zigbee, but there's a lot of organizations that have been, engaged. OCF being one that I'm familiar with. That has 750 manufacturers, 800 manufacturers in OCF. So what do you think happens now? Because I think it gets back to the confusing situation for consumers. Do I buy a Zigbee device, an OCF device? Are they different? Are they the same? What's the scenario?
Exactly. We're already thinking about this. In fact, we have a liaison with OCF, so we use them as a real-time example. Sitting down with Ed and David,
right.
And we have a great relationship. So where does that go? We do want to see the industry further improve, simplify, consolidate. So where does that go? Maybe next year we can talk about something great again.
But that's just, and in fact, OCF came out of the fact that you had the Qualcomm guys, you had the Intel guys, let's get together, right? And in my world, our focus is on the in-home network, right? Given that the cable industry, provides, we pass 92% of all U.S. homes, leading broadband provider around the world for consumers. And the biggest fear that the cable industry has is someone goes and buys a device, at the Home Depot, drops it on the network, and it blows a hole right into the network inside the consumer's home, right? Because who do they call? They don't debug to see, which device did I just add on.
Yep.
They're calling the cable guys going, I've got a security problem, and it's your problem to fix.
And they roll a truck, and it's $150.
Exactly. Yeah. And how do I fix this? You went and you bought this device from this manufacturer that has this security patch, and used the consumer, didn't apply the security patch, and it just has this huge cascade effect, right? So there's like this real nervousness in the industry saying like, can we get like everybody together and agree on something so that we know how to interact and how to operate with that? So we're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we're going to continue our conversation with John Osborne and also catch up on what else he's doing since, over the last year. I know he's been kind of focused on the whole Zigbee thing, but I'm sure there's a bunch of other stuff that he's working on and some other announcements that are coming. I'll see if I can't trip him up and get him to leak something here. So don't go anywhere. We're going to be right back after this quick commercial break. You're listening to the Killer Innovation Show on the BizTalk Radio Network. Welcome back to the show. Hey, John, one of the things that I get a lot of inquiries from listeners of the show is, maybe they have a great idea for an IoT device, and they're not quite sure how to go from idea to actually getting something, right? Again, it's this issue of, who do I align with? Are there standards out there that I should be working with? And in addition to being chair at Zigbee, you're also active in this industry. And you were actually one of the early innovators in creating IoT sensors and that when you were back at Kroger, like temperature sense. I remember the temperature sensor work.
That was the big one.
The big one, how do you, have accuracy and trackability of temperatures in food cases and that.
And be compliant for safety reasons.
For safety reasons. Make sure the food's not going to make somebody sick or whatever. So you've got a lot of experience, not only on this, okay, I'm going to call Zigbee a standard, right? So it's the Zigbee standard, but also having been in the real world of actually coming up with an idea and turning it into a device.
Right.
Where do those mesh, and what advice would you give to somebody that maybe has an idea for an IoT sensor or some kind of a device? Yeah. What would be the thought process?
Well, so the company that I work for, LEEDARSON, which is a global OEM, ODM lighting IoT company, we can do that for folks. Whether they're mature enough, they come in, they have a design, they say, hey, can you build this for me, validate it's correct, and run through it. Or we're happy to work with folks that have the idea, and we assign project managers, engineers, protocol guys, and we work with them to understand what is the right solution. So someone might come in and say, hey, I'd like to do this Wi-Fi something or other. And then we could sit down and say, does that really make sense? Maybe it should be Thread, maybe it should be Z-Wave or Bluetooth or something else, because the environment you're talking about putting this in may not be the right approach for whatever you're looking to build on. So we try to educate as much as we can. Then we'll go through the design process. We'll have several iterations of stereolithograph files going back and forth. We do 3D prints for folks. We will overnight things from our manufacturing plants so they can touch it, they can feel it, and we'll do iterations real time in some cases. And we're doing that with one large customer on the East Coast right now. And we're going as rapidly as possible. They're learning things. We've learned a few things from their requirements and their needs. But ultimately, we'll get to a production, and we think we'll do millions and millions of these devices for them. Mm-hmm. It's the same process regardless of scale. So if it's whether you're a multi-billion-dollar company or you're someone trying to get started in the industry, we're happy to help you.
Okay. That's interesting because, I get a lot of inquiries for consumer electronic devices. Someone's got the new idea for a tablet or a laptop they want to build, right? And I get these calls just because of my history at HP, and it's introducing them to an agent in Taipei who then has a relationship with the ODMs, whether it be Compal or Foxconn or Flex or whoever, to actually, help them on the prototype design work, and then, get ready to scale. So, I'm guessing you see a pretty wide range of some pretty, kind of standard ideas, and some that are kind of like, whoa, a little more than a little wacky.
Yeah, we do have some folks that'll come in and say, I have this great idea, I'd like you to build this. And we go, well, we have that kind of in the SKU already. Let's make some modifications, and we'll maybe do a certification transfer. We do all the testing and certification, make it compliant to whatever rules and regulations, and we simply just pink it and shrink it and package it and ship it over to them. Others will come in and they'll have some really great ideas about multi-something or other devices, and we'll have to run through radio tests and some other things. But ultimately, if it's a great idea, we'll share a patent with them if we do joint development. If they want us just to do the work and they own everything, hey, that's great too. But with our organization, we have hundreds of engineers. We've got patents of our own that we can kind of help people move forward with for protection. So we kind of cover all the bases. We're not just a go out and manufacture. We can manufacture 65 million pieces a month. But if you need all the other engineering and design help as well, we're there to.
That's interesting. Yeah, because in many cases, a lot of people come up with the idea, but they may not have all the engineering skills or the experience. They just know that, hey, I think this is a really cool idea. How do I go through and get those?
Sketch it out. We could do the 3D work for them. We could do the rapid print for them. We could ship it to them, so they don't have to invest and learn how to run a 3D printer.
Well, that's exactly, or even how to get it up out of the dirt. They may just have simply the concept, but how do you get it up out of the dirt?
And one-stop shop, so you don't have to go to 4 or 5 different companies and hope that they all talk together. We can do it a little bit quicker.
Well, it's interesting because other ones of like ODMs like Flex, I've had some of the executives on Flextronics have been on the show, and Flex now has this whole separate group that's focused on really early stage, rough, raw ideas, right? With the hope that some of those are going to get some traction and then fill the capacity of the manufacturing scale. So the question, gets down to is there's just been this prediction out there, like, look, okay, we had hundreds of thousands and millions of devices out there. We're getting into billions of devices on the network, and with just the proliferation of IoT devices, we're going to be into the trillion of devices. Do you think that's accurate? Do you think we get to that kind of a sheer just number of devices that are out there?
Absolutely believe it. I think that even the common home is going to have hundreds and hundreds of devices ultimately. Especially when you walk around the show here this week, everything seems to be connected, even a toothbrush. I mean, I
cannot figure out why. I don't want my toothbrush tattling on me to my dental hygienist. When my dental hygienist asks, have you been brushing? Oh, yeah, I brush regularly. Twice a day. Not a problem. You go, no, that's not what your toothbrush reported to me.
Yep. Everything's connected. I took a tour of the Amazon booth. It seems like everything's voice activated. So I think we'll see this trend around voice as well. But not everyone's going to want to be voice enabled. It can be a very noisy world. So I think we'll see things like gestures. I think we'll get back to more just touch. And the systems will start to learn, because you don't want to have to turn your lights off and on with your phone or switches. Just let the system learn your habits, and just do the work for you. And I think that's ultimately where we're headed. So it's not just a connected home or building. It truly becomes a smart home or building.
Well, I remember because I came over to the booth. Was it here? A couple years ago.
Yeah.
And you had those light switches, and they would learn that, if I hit that switch, odds are I'm going to hit that switch next. And it learned to just go ahead and make that connection and turn on the other light switches. And I thought that was like, and I thought about it in my own house. It's exactly what happens. I'm coming from the bedroom to the kitchen. I hit that light switch for the hallway, that light switch for the living room, and then ultimately turn the lights on in the kitchen.
And none of those switches had batteries. They were all green powered.
Yep.
So we're saving the world because we're not doing battery. Dumping them into the trash.
Into the trash. So we're gonna take another quick commercial break. When we come back, we'll continue our conversation with John Osborne talking about IoT devices and Zigbee and how to go from idea to actually getting a product out on the shelf. So don't go anywhere. We're going to be right back after this quick commercial break. You're listening to Killer Innovations on the BizTalk Radio Network. So we're back here in the mobile studio with John Osborne. John's been on the show many a time. I'd like for you to kind of share what you have seen as some of the more unique applications of IoT. Right? There's been, we got Nest. I have Nest thermostats in my house. I have 11 Nest smoke detectors in my house, which drive me nuts sometimes because of, they think they're seeing smoke, but it's really dust because I live in the mountains. But the fact that I can be here in Las Vegas and say, "Oh, I forgot to do something at the house and connect to my devices," right? But those are kind of, everybody's seen those examples, and the light bulbs where you can change the color, those kinds of things. What are some of the more, what I would call novel or unique applications that you've seen?
Yeah, so I would say there's very few really great new ideas. It's a combination of what we have done in the past, where we're seeing multifunctional devices. Some of the, for example, smoke detectors are becoming more intelligent.
Right.
So they might actually understand that you have just burned the steak, but using infrared cameras, they don't see fire, so therefore don't alarm the system. Where I think we're starting to see a lot of big changes is within the artificial intelligence side. So more of this is getting to the edge as computing power starts to move further and further out to the edge. And that's hitting a boundary because people want a low-cost device. They don't want a battery put into it. So we're starting to see that we've got to find that boundary and push it to where the end device becomes smart enough that you don't have to necessarily go back to the cloud. And we're seeing a lot of these type of demonstrations where they say everything's great, but unfortunately our network connection's down, our cloud's not available, and I can't turn the lights off and on, or I can't get this to work. So we're seeing more of that. Got to come back to the home. Got to come back to the building where it's able to work in a disconnected state. The value add is, yes, connected to the internet, talking to all the different devices, your systems, everything else, but some of the cool things I've seen is in the lighting space, where they want that immediate reaction because they've tied lighting into entertainment, gaming or movies, so that if you're out there playing, Fortnite or something, you're actually having your room around you kind of emulating what's happening. Explosions and lights and things like that. And it has to happen real time.
Exactly.
with that game.
Right.
So there's things that we will get to from a speed perspective, but you got to balance it because you don't want to spend a lot of time, money, and effort on a processor for $50 when the consumer wants it for $4 or $5.
Right.
So that's where the boundary will start to kind of move back and forth.
Yeah, well, it's interesting when you talk about edge and edge compute because it's a big activity around for ISPs, right? Because of gaming being the example you use, right? How do you drive to low latency? Well, nobody's been able to figure out how to violate the speed of light. So distance is your enemy. So you have to bring that compute closer. But the trade-off is it increases, capital spend to put all that around on a global network scale type of thing. And in the case of many of the IoT devices, the device functionality exists in some other way. I have a light bulb. My light works. I turn it on. Light comes on. Now I'm IoT enabling that, but there's a cost lift to do that.
Yes.
And what's that cost lift look like? What do you think the boundaries are where people say, whoa, that, you're going to take a light bulb that's $4 and now it's $140. That kind of, not going to happen. What do you think? Is it 10% incremental cost that consumers kind of where you see the sensitivity lines of 25% incremental cost? Is there a boundary there where it's just kind of like
the trend is they want more functionality for much less cost, and we understand this. We work with some of our customers, and I can't name them for non-disclosure purposes, but I think the price point on a smart bulb, people are willing to pay maybe $5, for example.
$5 premium to get the functionality?
To get the functionality. And that's if we can get to that point, everyone starts to replace every bulb in their house, every fixture, every downlight becomes connected at that point and really starts to learn your habits and becomes that smart home that you wanted it to be.
So what's the premium today? Are we at $5 today, or is that kind of a target to get to?
I think that's a target we're all shooting for. You could go through all the DIYs, the Depots and the IKEAs and others, and they're, depending on the functionality of the device, $10.
Okay.
And we really are trying to drive that price down. But someone comes in and says,
so it's the IoT equivalent of Moore's Law.
Yes.
How do I get that I got to increase the functionality, but get to scale to drive that cost down.
And picking the right protocol. Do you want a Wi-Fi radio? Okay, that's going to be a little bit more expensive than a Z-Wave radio, which might be more expensive than a Bluetooth radio versus the cost of a Zigbee radio. So these are all the things that we're going to have to start to balance. And if we can say, if you want a lower price, you've got to drive towards this protocol, and you all have to start, agreeing on where we're headed. And I think that's ultimately where we saw the Apples and Amazons and Googles and the Zigbee guys saying, let's push towards this direction. So
right.
Lower cost, higher functionality, commonality. So just go buy the bulb. You don't care what the logo is on it. Turn it on, screw it in, turn it on, connect it to your phone or your tablet, and just use it.
So here's the question: what, price being one barrier, what are the other barriers that you think are preventing a tipping point where everybody just goes and replaces every device in their home?
With a lot of the ecosystems that are out there today, no one wants to just toss that purchase out from 18 months ago. So they're when they see something new come in, are they going to do a whole new ecosystem for several $100s? Are they going to have a professional come in and install it? We have to come up with the right solution that says, keep what you have today, and we future-proof it so that whatever we're going to develop in the next 12 months, you just add to it.
You think the ecosystem barrier, meaning I can buy one but know that I'm going to have long life, people are kind of saying, well, I'm waiting for the dust to settle on that.
Because I think most people today are buying a limited, for example, a box kit that does a couple of door sensors, a couple of bulbs, and then they say, I'd like to do the whole house, but I don't want to spend hundreds and hundreds of dollars. So if we can go through a normal attrition process, I mean, I'm old enough to remember light bulbs would go out every couple of months and we throw them away and go buy a new one. Well, we're not doing that now because the LED bulbs last probably longer than I'm going to live. So how do you incentivize someone to replace a perfectly good bulb with one that's smart and connected? Mm-hmm. And it's going to be there for the next 10 years. So we have to future-proof the systems, working with the ecosystem providers to say, let's migrate you forward without actually having to replace all the equipment. So in time, when, say, routers get replaced probably every 5 to 6 years, you will be able to tell your customer, you're fine with what you bought today, and you'll be fine 5 years ago when you're ready to upgrade more horsepower, more support. That's kind of the model where we are, because we just hate to see people throw all this stuff away.
Right.
And if we can work with the organizations to say, let's future-proof it. It's always been backwards compatibility.
Yeah.
So we're trying to change that terminology of let's move
forward.
I think
that's an interesting one, because I don't know, maybe I think of it, those of us in the industry are probably more sensitive to this, how do I make that investment and knowing the complexity. But I would never have thought that the consumers were hypersensitive to it. But it makes sense, right? Because it's not cheap to go in and, I've got, like here in the mobile studio, where these are all LED lights, right? And, am I going to go through and replace every one of these LED lights to make them smart?
Right.
There's like 38 of them just in the mobile studio. I'm not going to, the cost to do that would be outrageous.
Unless you want to turn this into a mobile disco and you need multicolor lights, then there's the incentive.
I think the spousal unit would have a problem with that one.
You are probably correct.
Is there another barrier out there that you can think of that's kind of so it's cost, it's ecosystem, getting a path to success? Is it, one of the things I hear about sometimes is particularly with the voice activator, is privacy. Mm-hmm. They're not quite confident that, you're not recording everything. So if I've got voice controlled lights and voice controlled, thermostats and all that, what else are they listening to? And how do I protect myself? And, do I have confidence against, and it's a little bit of the backlash against the big tech guys on, are they protecting my data, and are they as concerned about it as I am?
Privacy is key. And as I walk through the one of the booths here recently, they had the voice activated mattress. Nope, sorry, not doing it.
Yeah, not on the buy list for me. So we're gonna take a quick break. When we come back, we'll continue our conversation with John Osborne, talking about where the marketplace is going with IoT, smart devices. We'll be right back after this quick commercial break. Welcome back. So, hey, John, in addition, we started off the show talking about what all's going on with the Zigbee, with the big announcement that you've got now Apple, Google, and Amazon as part of it. But Zigbee's been doing a lot of other stuff, and you've been spinning out other organizations and, aligning like with OCF on the one model, those kinds. So give us kind of that encompassing work that you're leading there as the chairman.
Part of what we are dealing with today is, are we Zigbee the technology or Zigbee the Alliance? So foreshadow there, we may be changing the name potentially, and I kind of like the Alliance because we're starting to pull in other entities. We facilitated this through something called Hive, and we reach out to executives in large organizations around the world and say, are you willing to come and sit down with us for a couple of days and let's talk about what are your issues, what are your constraints, where do you want to go, and can we as an industry put our differences aside and make some decisions that we work together. And this is kind of what drove some of these other recent announcements. But you mentioned OCF. We spawned out one common data model, for example. If we all worked from the common dictionary, does that make things easier? Absolutely. We have an organization that I think I would love to say we spun that one out, which is the IOXT, focused on security. Can we get to a common security that everyone can agree to, so that individual companies, startups, they don't have to worry about, well, I got to solve the security problem. I got to figure out all these different cloud-to-cloud models.
And it's not a value add. Why would you spend your R&D spend to try to recreate something that other people have already developed and proven?
Yeah. So we've been kind of planning this vision for, I would say, 8 to 10 years. The board of directors actively said, we are going to remove manufacturer-specific protocols. And when we consolidated profiles, you had a commercial building profile, a health profile, a home automation profile. We said, let's just make that one common protocol. And then we were able to separate the application stack from that, which could go over other protocols, which enabled additional freedom. So what we are seeing now is the fact that giving people flexibility from commonality. So yes, okay, we're not innovating a brand new spec, but that's not where we want to see people spend their energy. We want to see people spend their energy on the experience, the user interface, kind of the human aspect of it.
Right.
So if we standardize the technology, and we want to enable that through these programs and getting these larger companies involved to say, we support that. That's where Work with All Hubs came from with Amazon. This is the new chip program that you see with the big three today with Zigbee. And can't really tell you what we're talking about over the next 6 to 8 months, but there's some really big changes coming, hopefully within commercial building, which is a much, much larger scale.
So I know there's things you can't talk about because of confidentiality, but let's take a leap forward and think 3 to 5 years from now. What do you see the industry's at? Are we at this tipping point where we're going to see this big consolidation of all these activities? Because, if you go back 4 or 5 years ago, you and I had these conversations, you ended up with you had all these little groups, and then, OCF was, they drew in 750 manufacturers built around Qualcomm or Intel chipsets, options. You've been involved in Zigbee forever. You became chair when you were at Kroger.
Yep.
You became chair. And there's been all these other groups, but now, OCF kind of got Zigbee's there, and you're starting to see this consolidation. Do you think that over the next 3 to 5 years, you see that even becoming more aligned? Do you think that's the direction?
So I would say the initiatives that we have announced to this past month, if we can't execute on those very quickly, the industry will continue to fragment.
Right.
And it'll be ecosystems, and we just will not see the acceleration that we all want to see. We will be successful because I know that these organizations are assigning full-time resources to it. This is how important it is to them, as well as our other member companies. I think 4 to 5 years is a little too far out. I would say 2 years.
Oh, well.
That we will see a lot more consolidation.
Well, I think it's critical for the success because it's confusing for the manufacturers, it's confusing to the ISPs, and more importantly, it's confusing to the consumers. Getting everybody in line. So, John, if people want to follow with what's going on, right? Because you've been over the last, 120 days, you've been cranking announcements like crazy. How do people keep up? Where's the best place if they want to track, the work that's going on with the work that you're doing over at Zigbee?
So from a Zigbee perspective, zigbee.org, zigbee.org. I also post a lot of the stuff under my LinkedIn account, and I post a few things under my own personal webpage, jeoii.com.
Great, and we'll have links for that in all of the show notes. So hop on over to Killer Innovations. We'll get you connected up, plugged in. You can track what John and what Zigbee's up to, and keep track of what's happening. And if you're out there and you've got a great idea for an IoT device, as John said, we'll also make sure the connection's there to his company that he's with, so that you can kind of see what they do, and maybe there's a partnering opportunity if you've got some really great device out there that you think you uniquely got and you think can be a big win. And I would not underestimate finding the right partner is absolutely critical for these spaces.
Absolutely.
For the success. And Don, I want to thank you for taking the time. I know it's a busy show for you. You guys are out there really having a great message and having great success. Congratulations on all the announcements.
Thank you.
But I also want to thank you for taking the time to stop by the mobile studio here in Las Vegas for this year's Consumer Electronics Show.
It's always a pleasure. I enjoy doing it, and we got to get together a bit more often and cover over Skyline.
Yeah, we have to go to Cincinnati. John and I are both from Cincinnati, and go and get our fill of Skyline chili. For those of you familiar with the uniqueness of the Cincinnati chili experience. So with that, we're going to wrap up this week's show. Thank you for taking the time for listening to Killer Innovations, and we will be here next week. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.